that in Gaza, we had no buildings to open up. And I walked into the hospital and instantly I found the bodies of 3 dead girls there.
Can you share a bit about your experience in Gaza?
A lot of times there's war, which is scary.
What were the most difficult aspects of working in conflict zone?
There was one girl in Yemen.
Over 2 decades of experience.
And everybody has access to surgical care.
What motivated you to specialize in trauma and global health?
I always liked trauma.
Throughout your career, what accomplishments are you most proud of?
We're working with the WHO, and I actually wasn't going to be a nurse to start with. In fact,
Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have an amazing, another interesting and wonderful personality. Amy Leah Potter from Operation Smile. Welcome to my podcast, ma'am.
thank you very much for having me. I'm pretty honored.
Thank you. You are welcome always. Ma'am, as you are working in so many departments in so many regions around the globe, what inspired you to pursue a career in nurse department? Like you can be somewhere else, something else.
Well, I actually wasn't going to be a nurse to start with. In fact, my first degree was in business. So I was in university studying business, and I joined the emergency first response team on campus, where we went and we responded to emergencies that happened before the ambulance came. And that was actually where I discovered I liked taking care of people.
Oh,
So nursing was my 4th undergrad degree in the end, after many years in school. But it was great. And actually, after I did emergency response, I was a paramedic. And while I was taking my advanced cardiac life support course, I learned from a gentleman named Robbie Robertson, who was my instructor. He said, I'm going to be a paramedic and I'm going to do this forever and drive the ambulances. And he said, don't, go to nursing school. So it was actually Robbie Robertson that convinced me to be a nurse.
wonderful. And now you are happy?
I'm happy, yes.
Wonderful. Ma'am, what motivated you to specialize in trauma and global health?
I always liked trauma. So I like trauma because I think it's organized chaos. When you go out, it's crazy, but if you actually watch, there's a pattern to it all. So it was one of those things I was always interested in. And then global health came sort of it started with a love of traveling. I'm very fortunate. I've been to about 80 countries in this world, and it's been amazing to see them all. But it was a trip I took to Guatemala, and I was working with a team taking care of people, and I realized how much I really enjoyed that. And so I kind of figured out a way to put those two together.
Love it. Wonderful. Ma'am, with over 2 decades of experience, what pivotal moment have shaped your professional outlook and approach to healthcare?
Overall, you know what? I'll say this. When I started as a nurse, I'd already been a paramedic for a few years. So I was a little sort of cocky and arrogant, and I thought I knew everything and I was great. And I was an okay nurse. But I started working at a hospital in Seattle, Washington called Harborview Medical Center. And before that, I'd worked in other hospitals, but smaller emergency rooms. And I went to work there and I realized that I didn't know anything. And it was really humbling, and I had a chance to learn a lot from a really great team of people. And that became really pivotal because I learned that you have to be able to say, I don't know. You have to be able to admit when you don't know and when you're wrong, and you have to be willing to learn. So that sort of was one of those moments that inspired me now to continue constantly with education, both teaching and taking.
Exactly. Wonderful. And ma'am, I think you shouldn't be egotistical and be cocky about you are the one and you can be.
Exactly. I was wrong. I was 100% wrong. It was great. It was the best thing ever for me to go there. And by the morning of my first shift, I realized, oh my gosh, there's so much I don't know.
Exactly. Wonderful, ma'am. Ma'am, what drew you to work with Medicines Sans Frontières? Am I pronouncing it right or not? You can pronounce it for me.
I'm not sure. My French is not always the best. Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, or Doctors Without Borders, as we call it. So that was, I'd heard of MSF before, and I thought I wanted to work with them. And I remember, and I'm dating myself, but back in 2007, before you were born, probably.
No, I'm look younger, but I'm born before that.
I went with my friend Stephanie, and we both wanted to work for MSF, we thought. So we went to the cinema, and they were showing a film, and it was called Living in Emergency. It was a documentary, and it was all about all about MSF story. I said, "Oh, let's go see this. Let's go see it." So we went to the movies, and it was a very, if you should see it, it's still available on YouTube. It was a very realistic depiction of MSF. And we walked out of the theater, and Stephanie said, "I never want to work for them." And I said, "I absolutely want to work with them."
Oh, completely opposite.
Completely opposite. So after I saw the movie, I decided I wanted to, but MSF doesn't take people without a lot of experience. So I had to spend a few more years getting experience and education before I could apply.
Hmm. Then you got apply and then you selected.
I was very fortunate. Yeah, I got to apply. I got selected, and yeah, it was great. It was a very good experience.
Love it. Ma'am, can you share a memorable experience during your time with MSF that had a profound impact on you?
There are there's really a lot of things that happen, good and bad. Sometimes it's a good thing, and sometimes it's a bad. There was one girl in Yemen who actually was a good and a bad. It was, we were at home, we finished working for the day, we were in their guest house, and all of a sudden the house started shaking. There was explosions and some shelling nearby. A few minutes later, we got called to go to the hospital, and I walked into the hospital, and instantly I found the bodies of 3 dead girls there. There was another girl who was stable and another girl who was unstable. We worked really hard on the unstable girl, and she passed away, and we learned eventually that these were all sisters. And then the stable girl survived, and she was with us for a while. And I remember every day we would visit her, and obviously she was quite sad, she lost everything,
Exactly.
and but MSF, one of the things that we do is we tell people stories. We wanna tell the world what's happening in conflict areas because we can't get reporters in.
Exactly.
And so this little girl, we found out from her nurses that she wanted us to tell her story. She was only 7 or 8. She said, I want you to tell my story." And so with interpreters and her guardian, we got permission, and we asked her questions and everything, and then we went to take her picture, and she was lying in her bed like always. And she tried to get up. I said, "No, no, no, honey, you don't have to get up. We can take your picture lying down." And she said, "I want to stand up because I want to look brave."
Hmm. Wonderful.
In her picture, and she was just so sweet. I mean, the patients are amazing, the staff are amazing.
Inspirational.
We get the chance to work with national staff in countries and just the absolute best people. So I take a lot of inspiration from our staff.
Love it, ma'am. Ma'am, what are what were the most difficult aspect of working in conflict zone and of course with the limited resources?
You know, it's a frustrating experience because you wanna do more
Hmm.
than you can.
Exactly.
There's so much more that you wanna help. It's the story of the starfish?
No.
There was a big storm one day, and these people are walking along the beach, and I might be getting it a little bit wrong. And they said one man's walking along the beach with his friend, and his friend keeps picking up a starfish and throwing it in the water. And the beach is covered in millions of starfish that washed up from the storm. And he said, "Why are you throwing that back in the water? It's not going to matter. Look at all the starfish on the beach." And he said, "It mattered to that one." And so that's sort of what I always think of is it's really frustrating and it's really hard. We can't get supplies. We don't have power. We don't have internet. A lot of times there's war,
Exactly.
which is scary.
To scare.
But you try and help just that one starfish a day, and it helps a little bit.
It's at least wonderful, ma'am. Uh, Amazing.
Yeah.
Ma'am, what are some of the key initiatives or policies you are advocating for improve global access to healthcare?
Oh, with Operation Smile. You know what? Operation Smile right now, our overall goal is we want to make sure that every child has access to cleft and everybody has access to surgical care. So that's our overall goal. We're doing that a few different ways. We're doing awareness. So actually every month, once a month, we host a webinar that talks about global surgery issues. If anyone's interested, it's at Operation Smile Academy. It's all free. And every month the topic changes. We also pair with other organizations. So we work with the G4 Alliance,
Right.
for instance. We work with other alliances, all with the goal of advocating to get
Hmm.
more access to care. And then we also work with governments. Just recently, we worked with the government of Ghana, and they just passed the National Surgical Plan, much like Pakistan, who already has a National Surgical Plan.
Exactly.
So we actually do work with them.
Hmm. Wonderful. Can you share a success story that highlights the impact of Operation Smile mission on patient lives?
It's my absolute favorite story from Operation Smile. It was, in Morocco.
Hmm.
There's a boy, this was, like, 19 years ago, even when I was younger.
Oh, 10.
You were probably not born.
Yes.
There was a gentleman named Eamon, or a little baby, sorry, named Eamon, and his mom brought him to several doctors and couldn't get help. He had a cleft lip, cleft palate, and she couldn't find help for him, and she happened to be on a train, and she met another woman, and this woman worked for Operation Smile, and she said, "We can help your baby," and so they took care of Eamon, and they did all the things because it's not just one surgery, it's often many surgeries and speech therapy, but they took care of Eamon, and Eamon grew up. 18 years later,
Oh.
Eamon was on the internet, and he found a group called Cleft Connect.
Mhm.
Cleft Connect is a program that they've developed that allows people who have cleft lip and palate to reach out and talk to each other, like a support group type
Like
thing.
a sport goal for
Yeah,
the
and
same
so
people.
Eamon got on, and he discovered that he met great people, but then everyone was excited because Eamon was actually an Operation Smile patient.
Exactly.
So he has actually been great. He's been super inspirational. He's gone out and spoke at events and everything for us.
Oh, wonderful.
So
So back 18 years and 19 years ago.
exactly.
Love it, ma'am. Nice story. Ma'am, based on your experience, what are the most pressing challenges facing global healthcare today? So many.
So I was like, I don't know where to start. I think one is that global health is not the priority that it should be. There seems to be sort of a shift away from global priority and the importance, and unfortunately, I fear that that might get worse as with some of these political changes going on. We're also seeing an increase in conflict, and more than that, we're seeing an increase in conflict where people are not following the rules.
Exactly.
There's the Geneva Convention for a reason, and people aren't following and doing what they're supposed to do, so we're seeing where civilians get injured. And I climate change.
Exactly.
Climate change is causing more disasters, it's causing more food insecurity, and it's causing more problems. So I think the combination of these things, unfortunately, doesn't paint a great picture for global health. The only sort of positive side is that
Hmm.
I have never seen resilience like I do when I get a chance to go to other countries. And I am confident that the people they'll find a way through. They always do. They shouldn't have to. But they will. The resilience is there, and we just need the greater community to care a little bit more.
Exactly. Amazing, ma'am. Wonderful. Ma'am, throughout your career, what accomplishments are you most proud of?
This is always a hard question to answer because you always think, I should have done more. I
Exactly.
could have done more. I think most recently, I was just chatting about this at lunch. I'm proud that in Gaza, we had no buildings to open up a hospital or any sort of a center because all the buildings were either bombed or were full of people living, and we don't want to displace anybody. And so we ended up opening up clinics in the back of trucks. So we had mobile trucks, like a box truck or a lorry that does deliveries. And we opened up our hospital or our clinic inside of the trucks to try and make sure that we could get care to the people. So it wasn't enough. I wanted to do so much more. But we were seeing over 450 people a day
450 people
in
a
a
day.
in the back of a truck.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so I was proud that we were able to do it in just a few days, which given the fact there's no internet, there's no power, there's no phone service, so we had to, like, drive around to different camps to find staff, we had to borrow supplies from other people. Uh, I'm
Difficult.
proud we pulled it off,
You are
but
taking three. Wonderful, ma'am. It's amazing experience you did. Ma'am, who has been your greatest source of inspiration throughout your career?
it's it's never one person.
Hmm.
Um, there was a guy I worked with, named Dan at Harborview in Seattle. He actually just recently passed away, unfortunately, but
I'm
Dan was
sorry.
great. He's a big, tough guy,
Hmm.
and sometimes we have patients who don't behave in the emergency room. And let me tell you, Dan was always there to make sure that they did or to help you out. But I remember one day it was super chaotic. Everything's going bad. And you look over and there's Dan, and he's just sitting there holding the hand of this man who was dying. And it was like a nice reminder that although I needed Dan's assistance, he was making sure in emergency, sometimes we forget that these are people. We just call them like, oh, that's the heart attack and that's the gunshot and that's the this, that they're really people. So Dan sat with them for a while. I mean, I worked with Regina in Sierra Leone. She was amazing.
Hmm.
She would work through malaria to make sure that the babies and the kids were taken care of. And she was a leader for all the other nurses, and she was the best nursing leader. She never yelled at anyone. She never got angry, and everyone respected her, and she trusted them to get the job done, and she helped support them along the way. She was amazing, and I mean, and still to this day, Dr. Sweeb in Gaza. So he still has scars on him from when his house was shelled,
Oh.
but he shows up every day. He's humble. He's super funny.
Hmm.
He's great also with all of his staff. Everyone comes to him. He's an amazing resource.
He was doctor at Gaza.
He's a doctor. He's still a doctor in Gaza.
Oh, still serving
Still serve,
community.
still serving every day. And so every day I worry about him and I send him little messages like, "Who are you?" He's great. I mean, I could go on. There's so many people that have been inspirational to me.
Wonderful, ma'am. You share some amazing experiences and some amazing information in persons. So I love it. Ma'am, what are your hopes and inspiration for the future of global health?
I think we need to stop being so selfish. There is a shift in the Western world to go from a we culture to a me culture. And everything is like, what's good for me? What's good for me? And we have to realize that when we start thinking what's good for all of us will also be good
Exactly.
for you. It will do better when we're healthier together. And we need to remember that and we need to get to that point.
We need to work together.
Yes, we need to work together. I think everybody should have clean water. Everybody should have health care. Everybody should have somewhere to live and everyone should be safe. And people, when they have these things, perform better. The world does better.
Exactly.
And as a citizen of the world, we have to all work to help each other out to be better.
Exactly. And we need a better world.
Yeah.
Exactly. Ma'am, are there specific projects you currently focused on at Operation Smile that you are particularly excited about?
There's actually one coming up in 2 months, 2 months to the day.
Hmm.
We're working with the WHO and we're hosting a consultative session on emergency, critical, and operative care in Bogota, Colombia. So I'm excited, one, to get to work so close to the WHO as like nurse from a small town in Canada to get to work with the WHO. I'm pretty excited.
Exactly.
But I'm also excited that I get to work and help offer opinions, and I always have lots of them, on the future of emergency, critical, and operative care. So I think it's great. There'll be a good chance to advocate for what we're talking about here
Right.
and how people need to have access to surgical care. It'll be able for me to talk a little bit about my emergency background. So I think it's going to be a great session, and I'm pretty excited.
And you're excited for. Wonderful, ma'am. Ma'am, if you could give one piece of advice to aspiring healthcare professional, medical student, any person who work in healthcare, what would that be?
It's going to be so hard some days, and you're going to want to quit. I understand that. I wanted to walk out of classrooms when I was studying. I wanted to walk out of shifts when things are going bad or something bad happens, or you feel like you're doing nothing. But just remember that you really do matter. And it's not always the big dramatic things, it's the little things. There was this woman in Gaza who came up to me. She was 94 or 97. She couldn't remember. She'd been through at least 15 or maybe 17 wars. That she said this was her worst war so far. She'd wanted to come to us for about 3 days, but there was too much mud and they couldn't get her wheelchair through it.
Oh,
I mean, she's sleeping in a tent in a field. 94 or 97 is sleeping in a tent. But she only came in because she needed a dressing change for her diabetic foot. And so our nurses did an amazing job. They did her dressing change. She came up and she kept thanking me. I was like, what are you thanking me for? Like, you're living in a tent. The world is falling apart around you. And she just said, you don't know how much it means to me that I could get dressing supplies. And something as simple, not you saved my life, not anything. She just was so happy that we could do the small things. And so I tell healthcare providers, future healthcare providers, um, it's often the little things that really make a big difference to people. So just keep going. Some days are gonna be hard.
Exactly.
Have a good nap, have a good sleep, cup of coffee or tea,
Hmm.
and get back out there.
Get back out there. Wonderful. Ma'am, as you mentioned about Gaza, and we know that you work in Gaza. So, can you share a bit about your experience in Gaza? Because what they are telling in news, we don't know. What they're telling the right, they're telling the truth or lie, whatever.
It's
You
really
actually
hard.
experience.
Yeah. It's hard because, even my mom didn't know this. Um, no reporter can go to Gaza. So they don't have any idea really what's going on. They can't. They want to go, but they're not permitted to go. We have to have permission. Often in conflict zones, it's really controlled who can go in and who can go out. This was the same in Yemen, the same in Sudan as well. You have to have permission to go in. And so I can tell you from when I was there, that it's really, really bad. It's awful. And the majority of the people that I take care of, they don't want any part of this war. They're not Hamas. They don't even necessarily like Hamas. Most of the ones I talked to had nothing nice to say about Hamas, and they had nothing nice to say about the Israeli government. But the actual Israeli people, I thought they would be very angry at the Israeli people, but they were not. They said they're caught up in this as much as we are. Uh, what happened on October 7th was obviously awful. And what's happening in Gaza is a tragedy. It's indiscriminate. It's carpet bombing and attacking. It's hitting schools and healthcare facilities
Yeah,
and internally displaced camps of people who just want to go about their lives.
exactly. It's like open prison.
It
That.
is, and that's the other thing is that, other if you think back to, like, Ukraine.
Hmm.
In Ukraine, people left. They went to Poland, they went to Romania,
Exactly.
and in Gaza, and to this day, I still don't understand why they can't leave. I mean, I know I've seen all this stuff, and I know they're not allowed. It makes no sense to me that we live in a world where a group of people are not allowed to leave a war zone.
Exactly. So that's the thing. As
Yeah.
you mentioned, that on one side, people are leaving this place. Like they're leaving, they go to
Other
Romania and other European countries. But on other side, they can't move, they can't go, they can't like, just leave that war zone. So,
No, and I know in Yemen there was a lot of problems with people leaving too,
hmm,
just because of the geography. But the one advantage to that was Yemen was much larger, and so people could leave the area where the conflict was. Whereas in Gaza, there's nowhere to go.
hmm,
You there
have to leave that
you have
place.
right, and it's if you stop and think about it, we have 2.2 million people living in a teeny, teeny corridor
Exactly.
that is being continuously bombed. I mean, it is bombed from the air, from the drones, from the sea, from the ground. It doesn't I worked with someone, I wasn't very good at this, but one of the gentlemen I worked with, he could hear a bomb and he's like, "That's a drone. That's a this." He knew them all.
Oh,
I didn't, but
there's amazing skills here.
yeah, Remy was great. He had amazing skills. But we would see the boats, out in the Mediterranean. There was a constant whine of a surveillance drone. There was never, ever, not a moment I was there was not a surveillance drone
Oh,
above. You're constantly being watched. It's exactly the definition of an open air prison. I just don't understand how the world is okay with it. And I mean, I'm not getting into the political history of Palestine and, Israel. That's not my place to comment on because I certainly don't know enough about it. But I don't think anybody, no matter your religion or nationality, your race or anything,
mm,
should be indiscriminately bombed and forced to be trapped in that.
exactly.